So we were just listening to ReaSynth, the default synth in Reaper. I well, one of my friends told me that he thinks I might be one of the only people that's out there using Reaper that actually uses ReaSynth, but I think it's great. And I mean, did you hear that? Like I don't know. That sounds better than a lot of other plugin synths I have. And anyway, he told me I should do a video on this. Like, what the hell am I doing in here that makes ReaSynth sound decent? Um, I mostly mess around with this on my live streams just as a way of sort of getting stuff done, and it's a lot easier to have everything happening in the same place than it is to go plug this stuff in, all the things that I use for my other recordings. But I've really grown to like it, and I use it in my published recordings now. It just started by accident as a result of just seeing what can we do with this. What's a simple synthesizer that I don't have to buy that I can show people in tutorials, and it turned out cool. So anyway, let's jump in here and take a look at what's going on. So the first thing you'll notice is that I'm recording on 3 tracks at once. And if I record this, you'll see that we don't quite get the sound that we want if one of them's soloed. And basically that's because I'm trying to emulate something more like my inspiration for this patch was a CS80, which we're not going to come terribly close to, unfortunately, but it's nice to set your standards high because you'll end up with a better result. And so CS80s, aside from all the other famous stuff, if you're unfamiliar with them, it's the Blade Runner soundtrack's probably the most famous application. And it's basically more than one synth in one unit. So you play notes, and it's a layer of multiple synth layers. And each layer has multiple oscillators and multiple nuances and stuff like that. So you can get a really, really complicated sound. And I thought, well, why don't we do it with ReaSynth and include multiple layers of the same synthesizer and patch them differently. So I've got this really wide stereo pad. And I've got this big juicy poly synth. And then the last one here is a modulator. And that one doesn't have a master send. And what this one's doing is essentially ReaSynth doesn't have a filter envelope, but Reaper has envelope shaping capabilities in the parameter modulation section, where you can introduce parameter modulation from a sidechain. And if you send a sidechain input from a synth that has a volume envelope or amplitude envelope, you can use that amplitude. You can actually watch it in the metering. And you can use that to modulate anything you want. So in this case, I'm using that to modulate the Moog 4-pole filter plugin. So you can watch what happens here. and it's velocity sensitive. So when I play my key really hard, you'll notice that it slams the filter up really far, and if I barely touch it, doesn't even hit the envelope at all. So if I look at this parameter modulation, you can watch what happens. We can adjust the strength. You can adjust the starting position. Really have a lot of control over it. Okay, let's get into the details. What's going on in each one of these places? First of all, you'll notice that there are sends to this channel called delay, and I'm going to mute that for now as well. And we'll just go down this entire effects chain. Hop in. This is going to take a while. ReaSynth instance 1. Very boring, but you're hearing that as part of that big sound. What I wanted here was kind of a very solid, right down the middle, pure tone with a great deal of octave up. So I have an extra sine wave down here mixed in at plus 1200 cents. 1200 cents is 1 octave, 2400 cents is 2 octave. And let's just get that back to where it was. I've actually noticed what appears to be a glitch in ReaSynth, where if you have parameter modulation going, you can't type in new values. So if anyone's watching that can fix that, I would love to see that change. Next, we've got center pad. Center pad is a pulse width modulation thing, and you'll notice that my tuning has instability built into it. This one has vibrato, I would call that. And again, this vibrato is created in a parameter modulation using LFO. There's plenty of great videos on that. I've seen videos from all the usual suspects, Kenny Joy, John Tidy, etc., on using that. I've got some videos on using that. It's just, this isn't the video to explain that, I think. But anyway, I'm using an LFO on this patch to create something more akin to tuning instability, which is what we experience on classic analog synthesizers. The oscillators are just, they're being controlled by voltage. They're not being controlled digitally, so the tuning is inconsistent. And that's a big part of why like analog synths sound better. In my opinion, that sounding better is the result of not requiring attention to detail to get to the desired result. You'll see a Minimoog Model D in the background. I use this on almost every track I make because it takes like 4 seconds to make it sound good, whereas on ReaSynth it'll take me 2 hours to sound design something that's sort of comparable. Well, maybe not 2 hours, like maybe half an hour these days since I use ReaSynth so much. But at the end of the day, I'll show you how I'm sort of recreating that analogness in here. So first, the big thing is tuning instability. Again, this is pulse width. I mentioned the CS80 as an inspiration. The pulse waves on a CS80 are amazing. That's like, I mean, enough said. They have tuning instability and beautiful pulse width modulation. So let's bring in a left and a right one. I think that these are using the plug-in pin connector. So you'll notice that both of these are essentially more, I think of them as more oscillators, and they both have tuning instability and pulse width modulation. The pulse width modulation is playing back, you guessed it, at a different phase. So I'm adjusting the phase of the sine wave that I'm using to modulate that. And what that does is it gives the left and the right channel different pulse width modulation. So let's hear all 4 of those together in mono, and then in mono musically, and then in poly. So once you got a chord, it's got kind of a big sound. And That's all there is to it. Okay, first non-tuning stability analogification is saturation. Very subtle difference. I set the saturation quite low because I use multiple instances of it. And on analog circuits, usually you get some saturation, like in your mixer section, in your filter section. So this is my idea of let's introduce saturation in the mixer. So I'm thinking of this saturation as sort of the result of a summing mixer. And if we have ever mixed in a hardware studio, we know that there's a little bit of magic that you get from taking your stereo mix and running it through some type of like one of those like magic circuit boxes, whether it's like a Pultec or a just like a really nice old console with tubes in it or something like that. Just get beautiful sound out of those things, and it's the result of, again, not having to worry about dialing in the EQ character of that board. And most of that stuff you can recreate it digitally if you are willing to spend a great deal of time, or if you're willing to go in and analyze the difference in the before and after. If you've got a friend that's got like a bunch of Neve preamps, just play the same sound through them a few times and compare them and make like an IR, I guess. I don't know how to make IRs. Is that a thing? Anyway, next up, I'm using this filter for bandpass. And again, I've got all this stuff happening in stereo. So I've got a left channel bandpass and then a right channel bandpass, and they are happening again out of phase from each other. So it creates this like bizarre. There's something else going on the left than there is on the right, but it's subtle. I think it sounds good though. So there you have it. Next one is a high pass filter. At this point, when you're working with a poly sound, polyphonic synthesizers just have way too much everything, in my opinion. And I like to make my polyphonic synthesizers not have as much low end, because there's a lot of buildup if you're not careful. And this is it with the filter on. Without the filter, I'll do something similar. I don't know what I just played. Just like... It's hitting my limiter pretty hard. I'm using a limiter in here, going pretty hot to be lazy. Basically, without this, I used to record my videos with my voiceover separately from my stuff in Reaper, and I just got lazy, and now I have a voiceover channel and all of it runs through the same limiter. Everything's relatively quiet and it gets smashed together. It's a time saver for me, and I hope you don't mind. So back to that thing on, and then we get here, which is where it starts getting really fun. This is my low pass filter. You'll notice that it just takes everything out. And what's going on here? Well, at this point, I wanted to have a high-pass filter with a filter envelope. So at this point, I need to arm my modulator. And this modulator synth doesn't have a master send, again. And it's basically just going, I've dragged the routing from one track to the other. Pretty simple. And once you do that, when you experiment with one of these parameters, you can just go to the parameter modulation and select audio control signal, and you choose the new channels. So before you hit send, you shouldn't have channel 3 and 4, but after you drag this up to here, you'll have channels 3 and 4. And now we have essentially this envelope is now a filter envelope instead of an amplifier envelope, which is totally delightful. It's annoying to have two tracks, but at the end of the day, what do you have? You have a basically a workaround to what I initially thought was the biggest drawback of ReaSynth. And at the end of the day, like, there it is, right? That's a filter envelope. It's a velocity sensitive filter envelope. And I've gotten rid of the velocity sensitivity before. I can't remember how I did that. I'll have to spend some time with that and make another video. I'm sure that if anyone has gotten this far in the video, they probably know how to do that. But anyway, I like to keep a little bit of saturation on in the Moog 4 plugin, which is a great plugin. And even though I'm doing that, I'm putting some saturation again. So this filter section, I like to think of all 4 of these as my filter section. And there's more saturation, very small amount. If I take all the saturation off, it just doesn't have as much power. It's not a huge difference, but I think it's a big enough difference to leave it in there. Next up, what is a poly sound for pads without delay? Very, very subtle ping pong. I think this might actually be the default settings for the delay with tempo ping pong plugin. This is a great plugin. If you want, you can get this really wide. In this case, I'm leaving it relatively narrow because my delay send is quite wide. Next up, reverb. Reverb8 is a pretty good reverb. It's not my favorite. I usually use other ones, but I wanted to do something that is Reaper plugins only for this. That way, essentially what I could do is I can send you this this track preset, and if you have Reaper, you can load this. My website sucks right now, so I don't know how to make it a download, but bug me in the comments, DM me your email address, and I'll send it to you if you want this preset for Reaper. I've got like a bunch of other ones too. I can send you all of them. I don't care. They're free. So Reverb8, there's 2 instances of it. Why 2 instances of it? Well, first of all, I'm modulating the room size, which I think sounds pretty cool. And I'm modulating them at different rates. So it's really similar to what I'm doing with the filters. And you guessed it, different reverb for the left and right channel. Kind of cool. I think it sounds good. And finally, I'm taking some more stuff out of it. I want it to live more in the mid-range. I want it to have less low end, less high end, and I'm just doing a general EQ at the end to clean it up. So I could play this for hours. I think it sounds great. And it's at this point a polysynth, you know? Let's bring in what do we have here? You know, let's start this one from scratch. So this is synth 2. Oof. 1 instance of ReaSynth. So basically 1 oscillator. So blending in a sawtooth wave. I like to think of this wave shaping kind of the same way you would think of a filter. Essentially, you can soften up a sawtooth wave by blending it with a sine wave, and that's what we got. Having said that, I'm still using stereo filters. So again, same thing. One of them is right channel, one of them is left channel, and they are being modulated in the cutoff by an LFO. LFOs have the LFOs have different phase, and it just creates this totally wild left-right sound. Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And then after that, again, we're just cleaning it up, taking out almost everything. I want this to live just in the high mids and have reverb. This one I'm using the Sweet Verba preset on Reverb or Reverb. I kind of like this preset. I don't use this plugin a lot, but again, I wanted to use something that just is stock Reaper. Part of the whole point of thinking about using something like ReaSynth is like, are you a person that likes sound design but doesn't have money? And a lot of people are attracted to Reaper because of the low price tag. And the biggest setback in it, I think, is that it doesn't have a lot of instrument sounds. And if you're decent with sound design, you can really get some delightful stuff out of ReaSynth and out of Resamplematic, ReSynth Drum, or whatever it's called. Believe it or not, that plugin's actually decent too. I'll do a video on that if people want it. And yeah, there it is. If I turn these back on, let's hear them together. Oh yeah. Sounds great. Finally, we have a send from evolving layer and from main polysynth to this channel that's just labeled delay. Unmuting that now, and let's take a look at the delay channel. Again, just the magic ticket is just a little bit of saturation on each one of these sections. Just put the saturation after each part that you want to treat as its own like set of modules. Starting with delay with tempo ping pong. Quite a bit more width on this one. Reverb, but this one I'm leaving out quite a bit of the dry signal to kind of give it that space. Essentially, it's like a bounce that's mostly reverb. A lot of my favorite echo sounds are like echo combined with reverb, which I think is it's one of the great, delightful sounds. Big ultra mega tip, in my opinion, is reverb and delay. Just filter out all the low end. You don't need any of it. It gets really distracting when you hear like a stereo bounce echo and it's just like got all of your bass in it. So I'm filtering out a great deal of low end here with just a regular high pass filter on the ReEQ. Finally, saturation. Yep. Very subtle, almost no difference. That's part of the idea. You don't really want the saturation to be distorting it. You just want it to be adding a little bit more color. And all of that together, through this video, you're hearing it through a limiter. But I promise it sounds pretty good without the limiter. Yeah, there you have it. Thanks for watching. I'm going to play you out. Why not?